What if your mind could be trained like a sword, sharpened through fire, refined through discipline, and wielded with clarity and precision? In a world overwhelmed by noise, distraction, and emotional chaos, the Stoics offer not just wisdom, but a weapon. Today, we dive deep into 10 ancient tactics that will sharpen your mind, strengthen your resolve, and make you unshakable. 1. Voluntary discomfort, the inner furnace of the Stoic warrior. Imagine a Roman soldier rising before dawn, but the wise Stoic doesn't wait for difficulty. He invites it, not because he loves pain, but because he loves freedom, and only a mind that has faced discomfort, stripped of illusion, honed through challenge, can be truly free. When you choose discomfort, you sharpen your mind. You begin to think like a Stoic. You walk lighter because you carry less fear. And as the days pass, your mind becomes like tempered steel, resilient, clear, unwavering. Voluntary discomfort is not a retreat from life. The more comfortable you are being alone, the less you fear rejection, the more peace you find in silence, the less noise you need to feel alive. The more clarity you gain in stillness, the less confusion you carry into the world. Most people cannot sit alone with themselves. They need constant movement, constant affirmation, constant escape, because they fear what they'll find in the quiet. But the Stoic knows what is found there is the truth, the compass, the inner fortress, and he would rather be wounded by truth than comforted by illusion. Greatness is born in solitude. Seneca wrote most of his letters in exile. Marcus wrote his meditations alone. Epictetus taught in simplicity, without wealth, without audience, but with power that echoed across centuries, because power does not come from crowds, it comes from character, and character is built when no one is watching. So carve out solitude, not once, but daily. Let it become your sanctuary. Let it become your lab. Let it become your dojo. Because solitude is not the enemy of connection, it is the foundation of it. The clearer you are alone, the stronger you are with others, the more peace you build within, the less chaos you bring to the world. What you will find in solitude, the lies you've been telling yourself, and the strength to stop, the wounds you've been avoiding, and the tools to heal, the clarity you've been chasing in others, but only you can give. Solitude is not isolation, it is illumination. And the Stoic returns to it again and again, not to hide, but to emerge stronger, cleaner, wiser. Final words. The Stoic life is not loud, it is not flamboyant, it does not seek applause, it seeks truth, and truth requires silence. Not once a year, not when things collapse, but every day, as discipline, as devotion. So disconnect, walk, sit, listen, write, breathe. Find the place where you are no one but yourself, and sharpen the blade of your mind where the world cannot dull it. That is the 9th discipline. That is the strength of solitude. 10. Live by a code. The Stoic path to inner sovereignty. The Stoic does not drift. He does not wake up and wait to be told who he is. He lives by a code, clear, deliberate, unwavering, because a mind without principles is a ship with no rudder, and life will throw storms. Your code is not decoration, it is direction. It tells you how to act when things fall apart. It decides how you speak when you're provoked, how you behave when no one's watching, how you stand when everyone else falls. Marcus Aurelius had 4: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. These weren't words to him, they were orders. He wrote them down. He reviewed them daily. He lived them. To live by a code means you don't ask, "What do I feel like doing?" You ask, "What's the right thing to do?" It means you don't chase applause. You pursue virtue. You don't follow trends. You follow your truth. You don't act from impulse, you act from principle. Write your code, just a few rules, yours. Forged from experience, not borrowed from the crowd. Then keep it, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And over time, you'll build something unshakable, a life with structure, a mind with clarity, a soul that doesn't sway. The Stoic doesn't need to be perfect, he just needs to be committed. Live by a code, and you will never be lost again. You have now walked through 10 blades of the Stoic arsenal, 10 mental disciplines, 10 quiet, invisible acts of inner rebellion against the chaos of the world. Not one of them promises comfort, not one of them guarantees applause, but all of them, practiced with courage and constancy, will forge a mind that is unbreakable. You've learned to seek discomfort instead of fleeing from it, to visualize loss so you may truly value what you have, to master the only realm you ever truly control, yourself, to remember death, not to fear it, but to let it sharpen your presence, to love your fate, no matter how brutal, and turn every wound into wisdom, to reflect in writing so your life becomes a deliberate act, not an accidental one, to reason through emotion and act with logic, not illusion, to pause before reacting, creating a gap wide enough to choose virtue, to seek solitude so that the voice within becomes louder than the noise outside, to live by a code so your soul never needs to ask for directions. These are not tricks. They are not hacks. They are not fleeting motivation. They are timeless, eternal, iron principles in an age of plastic philosophies. To think like a Stoic is to become a builder of the self, not in public, but in the privacy of your habits, not once, but every day, especially on the hard days, especially when it hurts. It is the preparation for living fully. It's how the Stoic becomes not just a thinker, but a force, not just calm in the storm, but the eye of the storm itself. Choose one discomfort today and begin the sharpening. 2. Negative visualization, mastering the mind through the power of loss. Close your eyes for a moment. Now, picture this. You lose everything you have, your home, your job, your closest friend, your physical health, your ability to walk, especially when no one sees, because a sharpened mind doesn't yell, it whispers with clarity. A disciplined soul doesn't demand, it moves with quiet power. A true Stoic doesn't break the world, he bends himself until he becomes the shape of wisdom. So begin again, and again, not tomorrow, now. This very moment is your forge. This breath is your test. This decision is your chance to be stronger than you were yesterday. Not perfect, but present, principled, prepared. The world will not get easier, but you, sharpened, anchored, and unshaken, will meet it like a blade meets the storm, and you will not bend. You will cut through. You will endure. You will rise. Acta, non verba. Actions, not words. Now go live like it, even your own life. Imagine it vanishing today without warning. Feel that weight, the silence, the absence. Not as a masochist, not as someone dwelling in misery, but as a Stoic. This is not morbid. This is mental clarity. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. But make no mistake, this practice is not pessimism. It is power. It is a sword forged in your own mind. And when used correctly, it transforms anxiety into acceptance, arrogance into appreciation, and fragility into true resilience. To sharpen your mind like a blade, you must become familiar with loss, not to invite it, but to remove its sting. Negative visualization allows you to mentally rehearse adversity before it strikes, and in doing so, you strip it of its element of surprise. You take what is terrifying and transform it into something manageable, something you've already encountered, in the theater of your mind. Seneca wrote, "He robs present ills of their power, who has perceived their coming beforehand." What the philosopher meant is this: the unexpected blindsides you, it overwhelms you, but the expected, that you can face, that you can prepare for. Visualize your loved ones dying, not to become numb, but to become present. Let this thought pierce your illusions of permanence and entitlement. Let it awaken gratitude. Every moment becomes sacred. Every conversation becomes a gift. Every shared laugh becomes a memory already cherished. Imagine yourself impoverished, alone, misunderstood. You'll begin to realize that much of your suffering comes not from events themselves, but from your assumptions that those events should not happen to you. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, Seneca warned. So what if we used imagination, not to fear, but to fortify? The modern world, with all its comforts, has tricked the mind into believing that loss is unacceptable, that pain is failure, that struggle is unnatural. But the Stoic knows otherwise. Life is loss. Pain is a teacher. Struggle is where character is sculpted. And so, we train for it. Not with paranoia, but with discipline. Each morning, before your day begins, sit in silence. Close your eyes. Think, what if today was the last day I could walk? What if I lost my voice? What if my friend turned against me? What if this moment, right now, was the last one I ever experienced? At first, it will hurt. That's the point. The pain is the sharpening. The discomfort is the whetstone. And over time, something powerful happens. You begin to love more deeply, speak more intentionally, live more fully, because you understand, truly understand, that nothing is promised. Everything is rented. Every moment is borrowed. Negative visualization also gives you an edge when adversity does strike. When you lose your job, you don't spiral. You've already seen it. When a relationship ends, you mourn, but you're not destroyed. You've already rehearsed the pain. When death touches your life, you bow your head, not in shock, but in recognition, because you've already stood face to face with impermanence, and you didn't look away. This practice creates a gap between stimulus and response, and in that gap lives clarity. While others panic, you breathe. While others grasp, you let go. While others break, you bend and return even stronger. The Stoics didn't seek to erase emotion. They sought to train it, to own it, and negative visualization is one of the sharpest tools in that arsenal. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote in his Meditations, "Begin each day by telling yourself, 'Today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness.' The air bites with cold. There's no warm bed to linger in, no soft blanket to hold him. He dresses in coarse fabric, slips on worn sandals, and begins his daily training with an empty stomach. Not because he has to, but because he chooses to. He knows the real enemy isn't out on the battlefield. It's within. Comfort, attachment, softness. These are the roots of weakness. And to be strong, to be resilient, to be clear-minded, one must suffer voluntarily. This was not cynicism. This was mental armor. By expecting the worst, he remained unmoved by it. While others reacted, he responded. While others complained, he composed. While others collapsed, he conquered. And you can too. Use this practice not to become cold, but to become clear, to awaken yourself to the fragility of what you love, and thus appreciate it more fully. To embrace uncertainty, not with fear, but with fierce acceptance. Try it now. Close your eyes. Picture your life without what you love most. Then open your eyes and savor it. every breath, every sensation, every ordinary miracle that surrounds you. This is the paradox of negative visualization. By imagining loss, you gain everything. Make it a ritual. Write about it. Reflect on it. Carry it with you. Let it guide your choices. Would you scroll through your phone or call your mother if you knew this was her last day? Would you rage in traffic or feel awe that you're alive, able to move, able to see? When you train your mind with loss, you teach it freedom. Because freedom is not having everything, it's needing nothing, wanting nothing more than what is, and nothing trains that truth into your bones. Like negative visualization, this is how you sharpen your mind, not just to endure life, but to meet it fully awake, to accept it without illusion, to hold it without clutching, to love it without fear of losing. Because in the end, everything will be taken from you. Your wealth, your youth, your status, your breath. But if you've practiced for that moment, if you visualized it, welcomed it, stared it down, then it cannot shatter you. You've already lived it. You've already risen from it. In your mind, you've already died. And so, in your life, you are now free to live. That is the power of the Stoic. That is the edge of the blade. And that is the practice that, over time, will turn your mind into a sword so sharp that nothing, not even loss, can break it. Now, go sharpen yourself. 3. Control the controllables. The Stoic discipline of focus. There is a battle happening every moment in your life, a war between what you can control and what you cannot. Most people lose this war. They spend their days reacting to the weather, to other people's opinions, to the news, to the chaos of life. They drown in noise, frustration, and anxiety, not because the world is against them, but because they've forgotten a fundamental truth. Only some things are up to us. Epictetus, a slave who became one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, began his teaching with a simple yet life-altering concept. Some things are in our control and others are not. That distinction, when understood and embodied, becomes a blade, sharp, precise, and unbreakable. The modern mind is overloaded. It's pulled in every direction. Social media, breaking news, opinions, distractions. But here's the truth. The Stoics knew long before smartphones. If you don't guard your mind, it will be conquered. Control the controllables. This is not a cliche. This is a mental discipline, a daily practice of separating what belongs to you and what doesn't. You can't control the economy, but you can control your work ethic. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you respond. You can't control aging, but you can control how you use your time. You can't control if someone loves you, but you can control how much love you offer without attachment. Imagine the power of a mind that no longer wastes itself on what it cannot change. That is the Stoic mind. It doesn't ignore the world. It simply chooses where to aim its energy. And in doing so, it becomes unstoppable. Think about the last time you were angry. Was it because someone disappointed you? Because something didn't go your way? Because reality didn't match your expectations? Now ask, was that within your control? Most likely, it wasn't. Here lies the sharp edge of Stoicism. To be ruthless in where you place your attention. To be surgical in separating external events from internal choice. The weather is not up to you, but your reaction to the weather? Entirely yours. The delay at the airport? Out of your hands. Your patience? Yours. That insult from a stranger? Not your fault. But whether it wounds you, that's on you. When you master this discipline, your mind sharpens. You stop bleeding energy into black holes. You stop trying to steer storms. You realize that control is not power over the world. It is power over yourself. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, and the most powerful man in the world, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. One must seek discomfort before discomfort finds him. This principle, embraced deeply by the Stoics, is what Seneca called preparing the soul for fortune's arrows. Voluntary discomfort is not self-punishment. It's preemptive wisdom, a form of psychological strength training. In a world addicted to convenience, the Stoic swims against the current. He understands that comfort is a false god, one that demands your mind in exchange for its lullaby. That strength is not loud, it's not dramatic, it's silent, solid, unshakable, like a tree rooted deep in the earth, unmoved by wind or storm, because its roots know where they belong. You must ask yourself daily, what part of this is mine, and what part is not? Is that criticism yours? No. The opinion belongs to the one who gave it. Is the outcome of your effort yours? No. Only the effort itself is yours. Is the past yours to change? Never. But your interpretation of it is. The Stoics used this principle like a compass. It kept them from being overwhelmed by chaos. In the battlefield, in exile, in sickness, in betrayal, they returned to the central question, what can I control right now? And then they acted. Without whining, without delay, without wasting energy. This is how you must live if you want a sharpened mind. You must become a master of boundaries, not walls to keep the world out, but internal walls that keep your focus in. A Stoic doesn't fight every battle. He fights the ones he can win, the war within, the temptation to react, the urge to complain, the impulse to seek control over others. He trains himself to stop, to breathe, to ask, is this mine? And if it's not, he lets it go, not with bitterness, but with freedom, because he knows that every ounce of energy he spends on the uncontrollable is energy stolen from his true strength, self-mastery. You cannot control the world, but you can control your thoughts, your choices, your actions. That is enough. That is everything. Imagine if, for 1 week, you focused only on what you can control. You didn't argue about politics. You didn't complain about traffic. You didn't blame your parents or your boss. You just asked, what can I do right now with what I have? Do that, and your mind will begin to change. It will sharpen. It will quiet. It will stop lashing out at shadows, and you will begin to experience a rare kind of clarity, a calm amidst chaos, a steady confidence, not because life is perfect, but because your focus is. The Stoic mind is not passive, it is powerful, but it is selective. It doesn't try to fix everything, it simply fixes what it can. That's why it works. So the next time life hits you with something unexpected, pause, remember the blade, ask the question, and take action where it matters. That is how you take control. That is how you sharpen your mind. That is how you begin to live, not as a victim of circumstances, but as a sovereign of your own inner world. And that, more than anything, is true power. 4. Memento Mori, the Stoic art of remembering. Death to awaken. Life. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. These words, written by Marcus Aurelius, emperor, philosopher, warrior, are not an invitation to fear death. They are a call to clarity, a wake-up slap to the sleeping mind, a reminder that the hourglass is always draining, even when we pretend otherwise. Memento mori. Remember that you must die. To most people, this sounds like morbidity, something dark, depressing, better left buried beneath distraction and denial. But to the Stoic, it is the sharpest mental sword of all, because when you truly face the reality of your own mortality, you cut through the noise. You stop wasting time. You stop waiting for permission. You start living with purpose. What sharpens the mind faster than the realization that this moment could be your last? Death is the great equalizer. It cares nothing for your money, your plans, your dreams, your grudges. It comes when it will. And when you acknowledge that, not abstractly, but intimately, you begin to live with a level of presence and urgency that most people will never understand. Seneca wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." Meaning, we waste time as if we'll live forever, yet panic at the first sign of discomfort. What if that changed? What if you woke up every morning with a deep, embodied awareness? I may not see another sunrise. You would say no to what doesn't matter. You would stop postponing the things that do. You would speak your truth more freely. You would hold your loved ones closer. You would forgive faster, love deeper, let go sooner. You would stop scrolling endlessly and start building relentlessly. The Stoics didn't use death as a tool for fear, but for focus. When you carry memento mori in your heart, you remember that nothing is promised. Not tomorrow, not even tonight. And that realization sharpens your priorities like a blade on stone. Think of the moments you've brushed against death. An accident, a close call, the funeral of someone far too young. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, regularly practiced living as if he had nothing. Set aside now and then a few days in which you will be content with the plainest food and with rough clothing. He wrote, "Ask yourself, is this the condition I feared?" In doing so, he stripped fear of its power, and this is what voluntary discomfort does. It turns imagined horror into manageable reality. It exposes the illusion. When you sleep on the floor, you realize the bed is a luxury, not a need. In those moments, time slows down. Colors become richer. Words carry more weight. Love feels urgent. That's the clarity of memento mori. But the Stoic doesn't wait for tragedy to feel it. He trains himself to carry it daily. You don't need skulls on your desk or tattoos on your arm to practice this. You need reflection. You need silence. You need the courage to sit every morning and whisper to yourself, "I could die today," not as a fantasy, but as a truth. Then ask, if today were my last, would I still do what I plan to do? That question is a razor. It cuts through procrastination. It slices excuses to ribbons. It reveals what matters and what doesn't. Most people live like they'll have infinite chances. The Stoic knows better. Every breath is a gift, every heartbeat a miracle. And so, he lives deliberately, urgently, not frantically, but purposefully. Death, when remembered wisely, doesn't darken life. It illuminates it. It turns ordinary moments into sacred ones. It transforms the mundane into the meaningful. It teaches you how to live. Because once you remember that you must die, you begin to remember how to truly live. You stop being afraid of rejection because you realize silence is the real death. You stop clinging to resentment because grudges waste your limited time. You stop chasing shallow pleasure because you recognize the depth of presence. Memento mori sharpens your mind by erasing the illusion of someday. It forces you to compress your life into the now, to focus, to execute, to feel. It doesn't mean rushing. It means removing what's in the way of what matters. So when you rise in the morning, before the day drags you into its whirlwind, remember death. And when you lie in bed at night, ask yourself, if that had been my last day, was I proud of how I lived it? That is the Stoic's way. Do not fear death. Fear wasting life. Fear looking back and realizing you were absent from your own existence. That you drifted, numbed, distracted, waiting, always waiting. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." You cannot sharpen your mind if it is dulled by denial. You cannot forge a life of clarity while pretending you are immortal. But the moment you accept death, not as an enemy, but as a silent companion, You begin to live with a power that few possess. You act with urgency. You speak with truth. You forgive without pride. You love without condition. And when your time comes, as it will, you'll meet it not with terror, but with readiness. Because you lived, you did not wait. You burned your light fully. That is what memento mori offers. That is what the Stoics knew. And that is how you too can become sharper than the world, clearer than chaos, freer than fear. So carry the reminder with you. Engrave it on your soul. You could leave life right now. Live accordingly. 5. Amor fati. Love your fate. Forge your power. There's a fire that doesn't just resist the wind, it feeds on it. A flame that grows brighter with every gust, stronger with every blow. This is the fire of amor fati, the Stoics' love of fate. Not mere acceptance, not reluctant tolerance, but love, full, fierce, unshakable love for everything that happens. The Stoic doesn't merely endure, he embraces. He doesn't ask, why me? He says, why not me? Amor fati is the radical mindset that turns every obstacle into opportunity, every failure into fuel, every wound into wisdom. It is the mental judo of the strongest minds in history, because when you stop resisting reality, you stop being its victim, and you start becoming its master. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Amor fati is that fire. It consumes misfortune and turns it into strength. It devours difficulty and transforms it into growth. It does not wait for the world to be fair. It chooses to be powerful anyway. The world will betray you. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall apart. Life will break your heart in 1,000 ways. Amor fati doesn't deny this. It looks it straight in the face and says, yes, and still, I rise. Imagine what it means to love what you didn't choose, to not just accept pain, but to say, this too belongs to me. This too is my path. Not because it's easy, but because it's mine. This is not passive surrender. It's the most active form of mental discipline. It takes energy to fight fate. It takes strength to welcome it. Epictetus was enslaved. He was beaten. He was exiled. But he didn't curse life. He thanked it. He saw every hardship as training, every injustice as a test. And he passed those tests not with bitterness, but with brilliance. When you fast for a day, you learn that hunger is not fatal, only unfamiliar. When you walk without headphones, you confront the noise of your mind and begin the long, quiet process of ordering it. To voluntarily embrace discomfort is to take command of your instincts. It is to say, I am not ruled by what feels good. I am ruled by what makes me strong. This mindset, repeated consistently, develops a mind that is clear, unshaken, and adaptable. To live with amor fati is to say, I may not have chosen this, but I will choose how I use it. You lose your job? Amor fati. You get sick? Amor fati. You are betrayed? Amor fati. You fall, fail, suffer? Amor fati. Not because those things are good in themselves, but because your response to them can be. The Stoic trains his mind to find power in powerlessness, to take what is and make it work for him, to transmute pain into strength like an alchemist of the soul. This doesn't mean you enjoy suffering. It means you no longer let it control you. You no longer label life as good or bad. You simply ask, what now? What can I learn? What can I build? The mind that loves fate is the mind that cannot be broken, because nothing is wasted, nothing is rejected. Everything is raw material for greatness. Amor fati sharpens your mind by removing the poison of resistance. Resistance clogs the mind. It clouds vision. It creates friction between you and reality. But love for fate clears the path. It smooths the blade. It turns you into a force of nature. When you live like this, you begin to flow with life, not against it. You become agile, adaptable, anti-fragile. The Stoic isn't rigid. He bends with the storm and remains unbroken. So when life hits you, say thank you. When fate shifts, adjust your sails. When loss arrives, open your hands. This is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. Because the one who loves fate owns fate. He doesn't beg for ease. He trains for impact. So repeat it. Burn it into your soul. Amor fati. Amor fati. Amor fati. 6. Journaling for clarity, where the Stoic soul is sharpened. So you've accepted your fate. You've learned to love it. But the Stoic's work is far from done, because acceptance alone does not mean understanding, and even love, if it is not examined, can become blind. That's where the next discipline enters, the daily disciplined act of reflection, the still, quiet ritual that carves chaos into clarity. This is the sacred art of journaling. To sharpen your mind, you must know it. To forge your inner self, you must first uncover its edges, its weaknesses, its buried truths. The Stoic does not walk through life intoxicated by motion. He sits, he writes, he observes, and with pen to paper, he interrogates reality, his own and the world's. Journaling, for the Stoic, is not therapy. It is self-governance. It is not emotional dumping. It is mental refining. Marcus Aurelius did it every night, not for publication, not for praise, but because he knew, if you do not write the truth of your soul, the world will write lies upon it. What is journaling, if not a battlefield of honesty? A place where the philosopher meets his own cowardice, his vanity, his anger, and, without flinching, confronts them all. To journal is to call yourself out, without shame, but with precision. It is to become both student and teacher of your own experience. It is to break the cycle of unconscious living and begin, instead, to live with intention. Seneca wrote, "At the end of the day, I examine myself. I look back on what I did, said, and thought. Nothing escapes." This was not obsession, it was ownership. The Stoic journal is a mirror, a compass, a forge. It is where the vague becomes vivid, where dreams meet discipline, where fear is named, and therefore loses its grip. How do you do it? You begin with the morning, before the noise, before the world's demands rise like a tide. You sit down and ask yourself, what kind of man or woman will I be today? What virtues will I practice? What threats do I expect? Where am I likely to stumble? This is premeditatio malorum, not merely the visualization of loss or hardship, but a mental dress rehearsal for the day's moral battles. Will someone insult you? Certainly. Will frustration tempt your peace? Inevitably. Will vanity whisper to you, seducing you to compromise your values? Always. The morning journal is where you build your mental armor, but armor is only part of it. You end your day, like Seneca, with the evening review. Sit with yourself, not as a judge, but as a craftsman. Ask, did I live according to my values today? When did I fall short? Why? What can I improve? You are not seeking perfection. You are practicing mastery. And mastery is not found in constant victory. It is found in constant attention. If you lost your temper, write it. If you acted out of fear, write it. If you hesitated when courage was required, write it. But write not to punish. Write to remember, to understand, to adjust. The Stoic knows, what is written is remembered. What is remembered can be changed. This habit becomes your secret weapon. Most people react to life. You, the Stoic, respond. Because you've anticipated, you've reviewed. Because what truly dulls the mind is the addiction to ease. Comfort sedates, discomfort awakens. The Stoic doesn't avoid hardship. He walks into it, not with a grimace, but with intent. Because every moment of chosen struggle becomes a whetstone for the blade of the mind. That is the secret. What softens others sharpens you. Voluntary discomfort also teaches gratitude. When you return to your bed after sleeping on the floor, you no longer take it for granted. You've studied yourself like a general studies the terrain. You don't stumble into chaos unarmed. You enter with a sharpened awareness. Journaling clears the fog. It reveals the patterns. You begin to notice. Every time I miss sleep, I lash out. Every time I skip my quiet time, I drift. Every time I act from pride, I regret it. Every time I respond from calm, I lead. You see your cycles. You break them. That is power. Do not underestimate the page. It is a battlefield, and you must fight there daily. Not against others, but against the parts of yourself that wish to remain unseen, undisciplined, unclear. You write, not to perform, but to purify. You write, not to display, but to discover. You write, because the undisciplined mind is the sharpest danger to your peace. This habit, done over time, transforms you. What begins as a few minutes a day becomes a fortress, a sanctuary, a training ground. You begin to look forward to your journal like a warrior looks forward to the blade, because there, in those silent pages, you meet yourself, without disguise, without defense, and each time, you become clearer. The Stoic does not need a therapist to know his mind. He needs silence. He needs honesty. He needs paper and courage. There is no correct format, no perfect template. Write freely, write harshly, write truthfully, write in questions. What is within my control today? What am I resisting that I could accept? Write in statements. Today, I will not be ruled by fear. Today, I will meet discomfort with grace. Write in confessions. I was petty. I was selfish. I was not who I aspire to be. But tomorrow, I will try again. Write in declarations. I am capable of more. I will not settle for mediocrity. I will live with intention. And over time, something miraculous happens. Your inner voice strengthens. It becomes less reactive, more thoughtful, more principled, more powerful. This is not magic. This is the discipline of clarity. In your journal, you do not lie. You cannot. You see through yourself. And in doing so, you learn to see through the world. The Stoic is not merely a thinker. He is a student of the self. And the journal is his most trusted textbook. It is where he studies patterns of desire, where he refines his relationship with fear, where he confronts the falseness of ego, where he forgives, not just others, but himself, where he recommits every day to the path of reason and virtue. Do not make it a chore. Make it a ceremony. Light a candle. Sit in stillness. Let the ink become your fire. And when you read back months later, you will see not just your thoughts, but your transformation. The mistakes you used to make, the worries that no longer matter, the strength that has grown, line by line. This is why journaling sharpens your mind, because it leaves no thought unchallenged, no emotion unquestioned, no day wasted. If you are serious about living like a Stoic, then pick up the pen. Write like your peace depends on it. Write like your soul is asking for clarity. Because it is. Because the world is not getting quieter. But you can. Because you cannot always trust the mind in the moment. But you can always return to the page. That is where the sharpening happens. That is where the work is done. That is where the warrior of reason trains. Daily, relentlessly, silently, victoriously. Now write. 7. Train in logic and reason. The Stoic's weapon against chaos. The Stoic does not rely on instinct. He does not act on impulse. He does not worship emotion. He trains his mind like a warrior trains his sword. with precision, discipline, and ruthless intention. His greatest weapon is not his strength or his silence. It is his reason. It is the cold, clear logic that cuts through confusion like a blade through mist. And this weapon is not born, it is built. Most people live at the mercy of emotion. They are pulled by every desire, provoked by every slight, drowned by every wave of fear. They believe everything they feel. They obey every impulse. They react first and reflect later, if ever, and they suffer because of it. But the Stoic, he steps back, he breathes, he questions, and only then, only after he has passed his thoughts through the fire of logic, does he act. This is the discipline of reason, and without it, there can be no clarity, no peace, no freedom. Epictetus taught his students to challenge every assumption, to interrogate every judgment, to examine every belief, because he knew that the mind, left untrained, is not a sanctuary, it is a prison. A noisy, chaotic, dangerous place ruled by fear, vanity, and delusion. When you drink water after hours of thirst, it becomes a gift. And gratitude, far from being mere sentiment, is one of the most powerful mental clarifiers. It breaks the illusion of entitlement. It roots you in reality. This practice is as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. Walk instead of drive. Eat plainly. Take cold showers. Detach from technology for days. Carry your own bags. Do without what you believe you need. And watch your mind evolve. To train in logic is to reclaim your mind from this chaos. It is to become the architect of your own thoughts. To shape them, sharpen them, strengthen them. The Stoic's method of reasoning. You do not begin with, how do I feel? You begin with, what do I know? You ask, is this within my control? You ask, is this a true threat or just an old fear wearing a new face? You ask, what would a wise person do here? This is the foundation of logic. It is the habit of questioning yourself before the world does. It is the mental posture of humility, not assuming you're right, but seeking what's right. Most people seek confirmation. The Stoic seeks contradiction. Most people avoid hard truths. The Stoic hunts them down. Most people justify. The Stoic clarifies. That's why the Stoic mind is sharp, because it is forged in fire, not the fire of passion, but the fire of truth. The role of logic in emotional mastery. Emotion is not the enemy, but untrained emotion is. The Stoic does not reject feeling. He refines it. He examines it. He asks, is this anger justified? Is this sadness useful? Is this fear based in reality or imagination? Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But how do you gain that power? Through reasoning, through the practiced ability to pause, to think, to strip away the noise and see the core. Let's take anger, for example. You feel it rising. You were disrespected, overlooked, attacked. The average person reacts, yells, sulks, fights. The Stoic, he pauses, he reasons. Is this anger helping me or hurting me? Is the insult true? If yes, I must improve. If no, why be disturbed? Is this worth the energy it demands? What will be the cost of reacting emotionally? The moment you ask these questions, your anger changes. It shrinks. It transforms. You go from being a puppet to being a pilot. That's the power of logic. And the same applies to fear, to jealousy, to pride. The mind that questions is the mind that commands. Logic as the foundation of freedom. You cannot be free if your thoughts are not your own, if your beliefs are borrowed, if your opinions are inherited, if your conclusions are unconscious. Logic liberates you from that slavery. When you train in logic, you begin to see the mechanisms behind your own behavior, You catch yourself in faulty reasoning. You notice your biases. You spot the cognitive distortions that lead you into suffering. You begin to live in accordance with reality, not fantasy, with fact, not feeling, with virtue, not vanity. Daily practices to sharpen your reason. Debate yourself. Play both sides of an argument. Strengthen your mental agility. Study Stoic texts. Look at how Seneca reasons through adversity, how Epictetus dissects control, how Marcus Aurelius questions pride. Journal in questions, not just what happened, but why. What belief caused that reaction? Pause before decisions. Give logic the floor. Even 10 seconds can change the trajectory of your action. Simplify complex problems. Reduce them to parts. Identify premises. Examine consequences. This is not academic philosophy. This is practical power. The Stoic is not trying to win arguments. He's trying to win his own mind. And that is a harder battle. The danger of untrained logic. An untrained mind will justify anything. It will twist emotion into excuses. It will build stories to protect the ego. It will avoid responsibility and blame the world. The Stoic knows this, and so he trains. Because the undisciplined mind is the greatest enemy of peace. Not the world, not fate, the mind. So he sharpens it every day, like a sword, logic, and the higher self. At its highest level, logic connects you to your highest self. It reveals the parts of you that are eternal, that are not shaken by insult or praise, that do not seek revenge, but understanding, that do not chase applause, but alignment. This is what the Stoic strives for. Not brilliance, but balance. Not domination, but discipline. Not reaction, but reason. Final reflection. In the end, logic is not cold. It is clean. It cuts away illusion. It reveals truth. It gives you a platform from which to act, not wildly, but wisely. When the world grows loud, logic is your silence. When the world grows chaotic, logic is your order. When the world grows dark, logic is your light. Train in logic. Practice it like you practice breathing. And over time, you will become a force of clarity in a world of confusion. Because the one who reasons clearly lives powerfully, and the one who owns his mind cannot be owned by anything. This is the seventh edge of the Stoic's sword. Now go sharpen it. 8. Practice delayed response. Mastering the gap between emotion and action. There is a moment, small, silent, often unnoticed. The more you expose yourself to chosen discomfort, the less you will fear what life throws at you, because you've already trained your body and mind to face it, to endure it, to bend it into strength. The Stoics weren't ascetics. They didn't believe suffering was good for its own sake, but they understood the truth that modernity often hides. Comfort is not neutral. Left unchecked, it erodes your will, clouds your judgment, and enslaves your mind. It lives between the spark and the fire, between the feeling and the reaction, between what happens to you and what you choose to do next. That moment is everything. That moment is where freedom lives. That moment is where the Stoic trains, and where most of the world falls. The Stoic's 8th tactic for sharpening the mind is simple in concept, but rare in practice. Delay your response. Learn to pause, not indefinitely, not out of weakness, but with wisdom, with control, with clarity. In that pause, you take command. In that pause, you become sovereign. In that pause, you cease to be a slave to your biology and become a master of your life. The world is reactive. People scream. People attack. People defend. People post before they think. They act, not from virtue, but from emotion, from fear, from ego. from habit, and then they suffer for it. But the Stoic, he waits. He doesn't repress. He regulates. He doesn't bottle up. He builds up. The pause is not avoidance. It is preparation. It is the space where reason reclaims the throne from passion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That revocation doesn't happen in the heat of a reflex. It happens in the cold steel of a pause. What does this look like in daily life? Someone insults you. The average person reacts. Anger, retaliation, sarcasm. They hand over their peace for the cheap thrill of a comeback. The Stoic pauses. He breathes. He asks, "Is this really an insult or just noise? Do I need to respond? What would a wise man do here? What do I lose by letting it pass?" Then, and only then, he decides. Maybe he responds with calm. Maybe he says nothing. But either way, his response is chosen, not triggered. That's the power of the pause. Or consider the case of fear. A business opportunity arises, risky, uncertain. The mind panics. What if I fail? What if I'm judged? What if I lose everything? Most people retreat. They listen to the panic. They equate emotion with truth. But the Stoic, he waits. He feels the fear, but does not obey it. He separates the signal from the noise. He investigates the thought. Is this fear based on fact or fiction? Will I regret not trying more than failing? Or would I advise a friend in my place? This is the mental self-defense of the disciplined soul. The Stoic does not eliminate emotion. He respects it, but he doesn't worship it. He doesn't silence the noise immediately, but he doesn't let it speak for him either. He builds a fortress around his will, and that fortress is the pause. Training the pause. Like any muscle, this space between stimulus and response must be trained. It doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in conflict, in traffic jams, in arguments, in anxiety, in the tightness before you lash out, say something cruel, quit something too early, or act against your nature. Start small. When you receive criticism, don't respond immediately. When you feel tempted, breathe before acting. When you feel insulted, give yourself a moment. When you're afraid, ask questions instead of obeying panic. This is not weakness. This is strength of the highest order. Anyone can react. A Stoic response. The biological truth. You are built for survival. Your nervous system is ancient. It was not designed for clarity, but for quick reaction. Your ancestors didn't need nuance when chased by predators. But today, your enemy is not a tiger. It's your own unchecked instinct. When someone says something you don't like, your brain floods with cortisol. Adrenaline spikes. Your ego is activated. You feel threatened. But you are not a wild animal. You are a rational being. And you must reclaim that ancient space, that moment before the reaction, and make it yours. Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things." And judgment requires time, distance, perspective. The Stoic builds that distance, breath by breath. The habit of stillness. When you practice delayed response long enough, it becomes instinct. You begin to catch yourself mid-emotion. You begin to feel the surge and ride it instead of drowning in it. You begin to feel proud, not of your reactions, but of your restraint. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to choose how you want to show up in the world. This is true power. You stop being a puppet of mood. You stop being triggered by circumstance. You stop allowing the world to dictate your inner state. You become a man or woman of principle. And principles are never reactive. The hidden benefits. What happens when you live with this pause? You make better decisions. You create deeper relationships. You stop saying things you regret. You you start hearing what others are actually saying. You begin to slow down time, just enough to live in it. The sharper the mind you want, the more fire you must pass through. The philosopher must train like the soldier, and that training begins with discomfort, chosen, deliberate, purposeful. Start with one act a day. Skip a meal, turn off the heat, go barefoot, delay a pleasure. Each of these acts whispers to your subconscious, I am in control. I choose my path. I do not fear lack because I've made friends with it. As Epictetus said, it is difficulties that show what men are. This sharpening of response bleeds into every part of your life. In leadership, it earns you trust. In relationships, it prevents escalation. In crisis, it gives you clarity. In solitude, it brings peace. When the storm hits, the Stoic trains not for sunny days, but for storms. And storms demand space. They demand discipline. They demand the ability to say, not yet, to resist the rush, to stand still while others run wild. In your greatest challenges, it is not your talent that will save you. It is your timing, and timing is built in the gap, in the pause, in the practiced habit of delayed response. Final words. The world will not slow down, but you can. The world will not stop provoking you, but you can stop being provoked. The world will not stop testing your patience, but you can stop failing the test. Pause, breathe, see, choose. That is how the Stoic wins. Not with speed, but with space. Not with force, but with focus. Every time you delay your response, you sharpen the blade of your mind. Every time you hold your tongue, breathe before acting, observe before deciding, you carve the shape of your higher self. This is the pause that protects, the pause that empowers, the pause that transforms a man into a master. Master the pause, and you will master your life. 9. Seek solitude, where the Stoic finds strength in silence. In a world addicted to noise, the Stoic seeks silence. While others chase crowds, opinions, and validation, the Stoic walks away, not in bitterness, but in wisdom, not to escape the world, but to return to himself. Solitude is not loneliness, it is clarity. It is the quiet space where the Stoic sharpens his mind, reflects on his values, and confronts himself with honesty that only stillness allows. It is the forge of the soul, where the distractions fall away, and what is true is revealed. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the Roman Empire, commanded armies, ruled nations, sat in council with generals and philosophers. Yet in the middle of that chaos, he carved out solitude. He wrote his meditations in tents during war, in palaces filled with politics, because he understood, to lead others, he first had to lead himself, and to lead himself, he had to be alone. Why solitude? Because the world lies to you. It tells you who to be, what to want, what to fear, what to chase. Every advertisement is a whisper. You are not enough. Buy this. Every opinion online is a scream. You must pick a side. Hate with us. Every social platform is a mirror, distorted, incomplete, demanding approval. But when you are alone, the noise dies, the mirrors crack, the masks fall, and what remains is you. Raw, undistracted, unfiltered. That's where the Stoic begins. Solitude is the soil where reason grows. Without it, the mind scatters. It absorbs the beliefs of others. It drowns in constant stimulation. It never pauses long enough to examine its own roots. But in solitude, you can ask, what do I actually believe? What do I truly value? Am I acting from virtue or from pressure? Is my life aligned with my principles? These questions require silence. They require space. They require the courage to be alone with your thoughts, especially the uncomfortable ones. Epictetus said, No man is free who is not master of himself. But mastery doesn't happen in the crowd. It begins in stillness. Modern life fears solitude. Everything around you is designed to keep you stimulated. Music in every elevator, screens at every corner, notifications that beg for attention, opinions that demand reaction. It is a constant assault on your clarity. But the Stoic turns it off. He closes the laptop. He silences the phone. He walks without headphones. He sits in a room without reaching for distraction. And in that space, he breathes. He listens, not to others, but to himself. Not to his emotions, but to his reason. This is not self-indulgence. This is self-inquiry. It is in solitude that the Stoic tests his character, because only in stillness do the masks come off. In the crowd, you can perform. In the spotlight, you can pretend. But in solitude, you must be real. And if you find something unworthy, some fear, some pride, some cowardice, you don't run from it. You face it, you study it, you correct it. That's the sharpening, the daily discipline of solitude. You don't need to disappear for weeks. You need moments. A morning walk before the world wakes. A few minutes of journaling in silence. An hour without devices or distractions. An evening of reflection without entertainment. These are not luxuries. They are necessities. They are where you regain perspective, where you reclaim your energy, where you remember who you are and why you're here. Solitude builds resilience.